Welcome back, everyone. We officially have our top 8 that you can see over there for Fright Night number 10. Now, I want to take a look at some of the games, and we're going to follow Shadowforce through their Swiss rounds and see what we can learn from our rank number 1 player after all of the Swiss rounds. Now, before we get into everything, I, of course, have to let everybody know that I am part of the content affiliate program. That means that the Phobies team does, in fact, give me in-game coffee for producing Phobies content, and they're providing the prizes for Fright Night number 10. So just wanted to let you know as we get into everything. But speaking as such, let's get into it. So this is, interestingly enough, a number of people, and I'd have to go back and look, Shadowforce played a lot of games on the Pyro Abyss. But after, I think 3 of the 5 rounds were on Pyro Abyss, and then the other 2 were on newer maps. So I'd have to go back, and this is part of the frustration with the Phobie Finder bot breaking, is that I can't easily calculate the statistics. I have to go back in and do it by hand, and to be honest, I don't think there are enough people that care. I don't think there are enough people that care about the map choice and bans, or even phobie usage for that matter, to justify the amount of effort that it takes. Pyro is great for big AoE. Yeah. I can't disagree. I mean, we saw how it worked out. Well, I saw how it worked out. Multiple people did try the Honey Bear counter, so we'll get to look at that when we get to the games. Since this is one of very few games that we've observed, and including the games I played on this map, this new map, we'll have to see. Shadowforce notably going up to 7 keys here. Now, I don't know if ManInYellow had a particular game plan in mind with this setup. I don't really know what this Murder Wing is doing either. I guess this is here specifically to prevent Shadowforce's Murder Wing from capping this point. That would make the most sense. Nobody used Snowball? Yeah, I'm a little surprised by that. I'm glad you called that out, DT, because I don't know about that. I feel like the mobility... I guess the mobility loses value as the game goes on. You know what I mean? Because you can kind of like swing between this point and like down here more readily. But this is very claustrophobic in the middle. And it's not easily traversed. Like, I guess if you have Snowball somewhere in the north, you can swing it to this top point and then slide it back. Easier than other Phobies, but... So here is the stuff of nightmares for most people. The big boss man. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Still no Terraform and only Murder Wing for flight. Yeah, these, based on what we were theory crafting and what chat has communicated before and things like that, it just does not... This is a very unique setup comparatively. That stim looks so random. I know we've seen people use it, but it feels so out of place. So I think the stim is primarily positioned here for the purpose of heart pushes. I think the stim is here primarily for the purpose of heart pushes. So that, you know, the aggressor takes this point, sprints across. Because of this, you know, like you go 1, 2, you get pushed, then you get pushed onto the stim. If your opponent doesn't respond quickly enough, the game will just end, as we observed last night, I think. Because whatever ends up here, if it survives, is going to push a ton of damage, either heart or to potential defenders. And the defenders have a choke point that they have to try and funnel through into a stim, and that just seems nightmarish. So I imagine it's intended to allow for some heart pressure. Still pretty surprised that Dearly Departed seems more heart rushable than I thought. It's the thing that... we'll pause again. The thing for me when identifying heart rush, maybe not focused, but heart rush viable maps, is how difficult is it to defend? And if you look at Moai, you look at whatever that disease map was from 2 patches ago, you look at this one, and a number of other maps, maybe even Phobos, like it's simpler to choose to go in than it is to set up and defend. You almost have to be in a pre-defensive position to defend on most of those maps. And of course, it is defensible, hypothetically, but it is way easier to get, oops, I'm hosed, because you ended up not reacting quickly enough, not reacting strongly enough, and then getting blown out. Because, like I said, here, unless you have a 3 ranger, you have an Oculus here, or Jar, Chuck, I guess, or you have like this weird setup of ranged Phobies, you can only get the one melee Phobie. It's arguably not that difficult to push if you can get set up here. However, due to this long run, and then of course trying to get through said choke, probably telegraphs, you know what I mean? It should telegraph anyway. If you're not seeing that coming, then like, what are you doing? So boss is going to the south. Panic point advantage, well, was Shadowforce. Now it's flipping the other way. Notably, odd number of panic points, so that's good. We get a Miss Moffat as the answer from ManInYellow. So, as mentioned, I saw a number of honey bears earlier today trying to combat boss. And I did mention this offline. I am glad that Shadowforce is abusing the hell out of boss. Specifically boss Gonzo, but boss also. I think this showcases in a competitive, victory-focused environment, because you could argue the ladder is competitive, but there's a lot of people that are just tooling around on the ladder, completing quests, doing this for the lulz, trying out new phobies, whatever. The goal here is to play in a competitive event and win. So you're not going to screw around with, oh, well, I'm just trying this for fun. I'm just doing this for the hell of it. You're going to play your best strategies. You're going to try and win the game, win the event. So if boss is still winning it out, even though everybody's in try-hard mode, it tells you something. I've used Rockets on this map. It's good with all the obstacles negated in a tractor in one game for me. Interesting. Interesting. So not a huge fan of the Bachelor here out of ManInYellow for exactly this reason. Now, obviously, the Henrietta is intended to slide down here, and you're going to get these trades back and forth, but the thing about the Bachelor is that it, of course, gets replaced here for freeze. Like, your opponent doesn't have to do anything weird, and that 200 damage or whatever is arguably negligible. And I do like the Bachelor from Shadowforce sliding up here, forcing ManInYellow to decide which of these panic points are you going to try and defend. Now, here's something that is immensely scary. It is unlikely that Shadowforce goes in due to the potential yoink, but you could juice boss and say, I'm going to cook your team. Which I think ManInYellow is baiting here. But speaking of, I'm glad that they're using the broken Phobies. Public enemy number 1 right here. Public enemy number 1. This is where Akira is just going to go, oops, I win. What exactly is ManInYellow supposed to do from this position? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Phobies. What exactly are you supposed to do from this position? You have some damage represented, but the Stabby and the Murder Wing are split off because they're trying to defend. So you have minimal damage in the Hevo and the Jin Sting, possibly Contortio if you get something weird. But now you have to, not quite full retreat, but retreat, because otherwise you're going to lose stuff to Akira. You're probably going to lose stuff to Akira anyway, but... And to DT's earlier point, no Terraform here, and minimal flyers. With that being the case, you potentially just lose right now. Because look at that. Gonzo's in range. Boss is in range. Boss now gets 2 hits. Jin Sting's in range. Like, you just get annihilated. As the kids might say, you're getting pooped on here. No one says that. Like, look at this. There's no, and I'm not sure. Could there have been a better position? Could there have been a better position for ManInYellow to not get blown out by Akira on that turn? Of course. I'm sure there was something slightly better. Would it have made any meaningful difference on the course of the game? Likely not. Now, there's the argument, of course, don't max out. Your opponent was banking. They clearly were going to put something dangerous on the table. So you need to have done something prior to this. That overwrites the fire. Better position to survive, yes, but it would just end up in Shadowforce cornering them. I agree. That's where I'm going with it. I'm sure that there was a better position. I'm moving the mic a little bit. I'm sure there was a better position that could have been attained to not, like, just not lose right there, because that's what happened. Like, the game is over. There's no hope from this stage. However, even if we assume that that was true, that there was a way to make that happen, the game probably was lost a couple turns earlier when ManInYellow could not put something on the board, whether it was Boomer, it was Raucous, it was whatever, which, as Urk was mentioning, could potentially have some options here. Admittedly, Urk wasn't talking about it in this context, but like, you get the idea. Hypothetically, ManInYellow could have set up something different, but I don't know. It's either you push and die or run and die. Yeah. There's an argument that if you're losing, draw the game out, not to, like, stall. I mean, you are stalling, but, like, you're not drawing the game out with the explicit purpose of trying to stall. You're drawing the game out for the purpose of, hey, if my opponent makes a mistake, I have a chance. You going in and allowing the game to end immediately means that the game just ends. So, yeah, there's the potential that you draw the game out and you could still win the game, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say Shadowforce is fairly well practiced and is not likely to end up making those sort of errors. This is also, by the way, like, I saw the Akira poll, then I went to do admin stuff, and then I turned around, and this upcoming Shadowforce turn is where I started watching again, and it's just like, yeah, it's kind of cute. In all cases, it's near point where Shadowforce doesn't even need the best position, just need an okay position, let the exchange go until she wins. I mean, you're not wrong. The Phobie quality advantage was clearly in Shadowforce's favor. The positional advantage was in Shadowforce's favor. At many points, the key advantage was in Shadowforce's favor. There really wasn't much ManInYellow could do, and I think it came down to the earlier turns. It required either more pressure to not allow Shadowforce to bank up, or required just not maxing out, so that way you could try and react to some of the things that Shadowforce put on the board. Now, that's easier said than done. I'm not saying that those were really feasible. And it begs the question, of those three Phobies, and I'll put this out to chat and to you on YouTube if I pull these later, what exactly should ManInYellow have done differently? And what exactly is the answer that does not involve just fight fire with fire and have your own boss Gonzo Akira? I'm curious, Jeff. What do you think could have been done differently? Because that wasn't even a sit in the fire, get cooked. It did, like the Hematic Ginsting sat there a little bit, but I don't know if Honey Bear solves that. It's tough. It's tough. Like I said, I'm glad that Shadowforce is showcasing these things, because if it is a problem, I want the devs to see it. I want them to know. Whole interaction is just scary, knowing that you can't do anything or not realizing the setup at the beginning of the game and then paying the price later. True. True. Probably be more aggressive. The only counter to Kira is to not let them get on the board. I don't think it's possible to do that on most maps. I think most maps are set up in such a way that it is, especially large maps, of course, that it is incredibly difficult. And we even talked about in the context of, what map is that? Phasmophobia? The one map where the new one that everybody's saying it's really hard to go second on. And if that's true, like the answer that a lot of people were saying is, well, DT brought it up last night. Go second, get a Kira on the board, press the I win button. I mean, it wasn't quite put that way, but the point is like, is that your out? Because, first of all, then that map is really bad. Second of all, like, what's the response to that?